What does it take for a prayer to not just be heard, but to actually be answered, especially when what you're asking for seems completely, totally impossible? Well, today we're going to dive deep into one of the most powerful prayers in the entire Quran, the plea of the Prophet Zakariya. We're going to break it down and really understand the anatomy of a supplication that works. So, our roadmap for this whole thing comes from the very first verses of Surah Maryam. That's the 19th chapter of the Quran. It's right there, in those opening lines, that we find this incredibly intimate and profound plea from Zakariya to God. And look, from any human perspective, what he was asking for had zero chance of success. Absolutely zero. So we're going to peel back every single layer of this prayer to figure out what made it so remarkable. And this brings us right to the heart of it, to this really fundamental question. What is the anatomy of a prayer that actually reaches heaven? I mean, how do you craft a supplication that truly connects and gets a response? The story of Zakariya, it doesn't just give us an answer. It's basically a masterclass in the art of prayer. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to walk through the 6 key elements of his prayer, step by step. We'll start with just how impossible his situation was. Then we'll get into the power of his whisper. Yeah, a whisper, and the raw vulnerability in his words. After that, we'll look at why he was even asking in the first place, his motivations. And then we'll uncover this one crucial Arabic word, khafiya, that honestly ties the whole thing together. It's amazing. Okay, first things first, let's just set the scene. You have to understand the context here. Prophet Zakariya, he's an old man. I mean, he literally describes himself as having bones that have gotten weak, and his head is, as he puts it, glistening with the white hair of old age. And if that wasn't enough, his wife has been barren her entire life. So when he asks for a child, it's not just unlikely, by every single human measure, it is impossible. That's the backdrop. That's the desperate situation where this incredible prayer begins. So how does he even start this impossible prayer? This is what's so fascinating. The Quran points out how Zakariya prayed before it even tells us what he prayed for. The verse says he called on his Lord with a nida'en khafiyya, a call that was hidden, a secret call. And trust me, this choice of words is everything. I mean, just look at the contrast here. On one hand, you've got a public call. It's loud, it's for everyone to hear, and it kind of implies there's a distance, right? But then you have the nida'en khafiyya. That's a secret whisper. It's an intimate, one-on-one conversation that shows a really deep and personal closeness. See, Zakariya wasn't putting on a show for anyone. This was a private, heartfelt moment, just between him and God. So, at the end of the day, nida'en khafiyya is about way more than just volume. It's a state of being, a state of profound humility. It suggests that the connection between him and God is so strong, so close, that a whisper is all it takes. The way he chose to pray, the method itself, that was the message. It was a message of complete sincerity and absolute trust. All right, so we've covered the how of the prayer. Now let's get to the what. And this is where that intimacy just gets even deeper. Because Zakariya, in his actual words, he just lays his condition completely bare. The language he uses is just so strikingly raw and vulnerable. Just listen to this. He says, "My Lord, indeed, my bones have weakened and my head has filled with white." I mean, he's describing his own physical decay with just brutal honesty. But then, right after that, he follows it up with this incredibly powerful statement of faith. "And I have never been, in my supplication to you, my Lord, unfortunate." Wow. He's reminding himself and he's stating to God that their entire history together has been one where his prayers have always been heard. And this right here, this is the core insight. This isn't a complaint coming from a place of despair. Not at all. This is the language of ultimate intimacy. It's like when you confide your deepest fears and pains to someone you trust completely. You don't do it because you doubt they'll help you. You do it because you have absolute faith that they will. This was his declaration of total reliance on God. But okay, why? Why did he want a child so badly, especially so late in his life? Well, the prayer itself reveals a motivation that goes way beyond just personal desire. This was a plea that was driven by a deep, profound fear for the future of his entire community. So Zakariya asks for a wali, which means an heir. But this wasn't about inheriting money or property. No. His fear was all about the spiritual legacy he'd leave behind. He was worried that his relatives might actually corrupt the faith once he was gone.
So he was praying for a successor, someone who would carry on his prophetic mission, someone to guide the people and protect the integrity of the message. It was a completely selfless prayer, all for the generations that would come after him.
Okay, this brings us to the climax of this whole breakdown. It's a single, incredibly powerful Arabic word that really holds the secret to why Zakariya's prayer was so potent. And that word is hafiya. So hafiya isn't just a word, it's a state of being. And what's amazing is that the Qur'an uses this exact same term to describe the prophet Abraham. When God says, "Indeed he was to me hafiya." So what does that tell us? It tells us it's a quality, the quality of someone who is deeply knowledgeable, profoundly intimate, and completely certain in the relationship with God. It's not just some random adjective. It is the absolute key to understanding the power behind this prayer. So what does it actually mean to be hafiya? Well, it means having this deep, hands-on knowledge of God's nature, his attributes. It means praying with this unshakable certainty, not just, wishful thinking. It means being persistent, tireless in your supplication. And maybe most importantly, it's about that intimate connection that you build over an entire lifetime of devotion. It's all of those things wrapped into one. And that leads us to the most important takeaway of all. Zakariya's prayer was answered not just because of the words he used. It was answered because of who he was in his relationship with God. The power wasn't in the request itself, but in the state of the one who was praying. He embodied this quality of hafiya, and that is what made the impossible possible. So, what can we take away from this absolutely beautiful prayer? Now that we've broken down all the components, we've kind of uncovered a blueprint for a supplication that's both incredibly powerful and profound. So let's piece it all together one last time. So here's the anatomy of a powerful prayer that we've uncovered. Number 1, intimacy. You approach with that nidan khafiya, that secret whisper. Number 2, vulnerability. You embrace it as a sign of complete reliance, not a sign of despair. 3, foresight. You pray for a purpose that's bigger than just yourself and your immediate needs. And finally, the foundation for everything. Strive to cultivate that state of hafiya, that relationship with the divine built on deep knowledge, certainty, and a lifetime of connection. This story of Zakariya really shows us that prayer is so much more than just a list of requests. It's an art form. It's a reflection of who we are on the inside and the depth of our most important relationship. And that just leaves us with one final thought to reflect on. If prayer really is an art, what does your masterpiece sound like?